First of all, welcome to everybody for the session of Workplace Week International. We are bringing in two great people to have a conversation about Brazil and Portugal and what the future of work looks like across the ocean. We have here Renato Fusaro, who is the president of Corenet Global Brazil chapter, and Miguel Agostinho, who is the president for the Portuguese Association for Facilities Management. They're going to bring us their point of view, and we'll open the conversation for us to talk about. I just want to have a quick a quick introduction of Workplace Week. Workplace Week International has been great, started on Monday, and tomorrow it's the 10th anniversary of the event. For the first time, it's going global and virtual. So we're all online. We're being able to participate from all over the world. We have people in this session from Europe, from the US, from Latin America. And I just looked up, we have someone from Australia in this also. So welcome everybody. We have several other events going on, and everything that it's being collected goes to our charity partners that are the BBC Children in Need, the Make-A-Wish Foundation, and I Have a Dream Foundation. The industry partners are great in supporting us, and we're having a great time. So I wanted to introduce to you the two people who are going to be with us today. Renato Fusaro is the corporate real estate executive based in Brazil and leader for Cargill in terms of real estate and storage. He is responsible for Latin America and is the president of Corenet Global Brazil. Welcome, Renato. And Renato is a collector of planes and helicopters. So if you guys during his presentation look around, he has several interesting little things for aviation around him. And we have Miguel Agostinho also, that's a consultant that has a passion for better quality of life. And he does that through the spaces people use and occupy for work. And he's based in Lisbon. And he's the leader for the Portuguese Facilities Management Association and the regional director for FM House. So Miguel, welcome. And Miguel has a very interesting characteristic also. He plays the guitar, and maybe he can play a little bit of fado for us in the end. Who knows? So we are not just about work. We also have a life, and we enjoy life all the time. So for us to get started, I would like you guys to get your cell phones and give us a chance to get to know a little bit of how you're doing and how you're feeling about this whole great reset that we're going through. And that will help us in the conversation and make it a two-way exchange. So if you please put in your cell phone or in your browser, www.menti.com, and the code is 3917802, or you can just scan the QR code here on your screen. So I'm going to change, beautiful. I'm going to change screens now, and I will have the questions for you on Menti. So here we go. I hope you're seeing this. So throughout our presentation, you will have this code again, 3917802. And here we go with the first question. So what did you do in the office before the pandemic? So you can write it there. Let me. So you used to to meet, collaborate, work. What else? Meet people, collaboration, exchange experiences. That's fine that everybody bring their own languages. Meetings, showroom, daily job, chat, socialize, giving you a little bit extra time. So we get to 20. So you do your daily, wow, ideate on whiteboard, have coffee. Coffee is very important. Uh, Meeting, chatting. So even before the pandemic, a lot of you remember the office as something we did together, right? So let's move to the next question. And you can always contribute to the first one. Let me move to the next. So now that we're having this great reset, that we've been all thrown to work from home. That's not home office. We have some friends that call it hell office, not really home office, because we're just working at home. We're not doing home office at this point. So what do you see yourself doing in the office after the pandemic? So what's the office for? Why would we want to go there? So physical events, teamwork, ideation, social interactions, client meetings, connecting, okay, collaborate, teamwork, work, gather, exchange, socialize, and collaborate, collaborate, collaborate. So we see that as we move forward, the more we learn to work, do our chores daily, we're moving to this idea of the office to get together with people. With that, I would like to stop sharing my screen and pass it on to Renato to start with you, Renato, and we can keep going.
Yeah, good morning.
Hello.
It's a pleasure having you guys here for this event. We are supporting the Workplace Week, the Corenet Brazil. This is the event number 49. So tomorrow will be the event number 50, the 50 webinar for the year. We are doing pretty well in the webinars during this year and even with pandemic. So let's say for the real estate employees like myself or the professionals, we have a lot of questions, and the main one it is what will be the future role of the office. So we are start to discuss this and how well does our current portfolio to meet the future operation model. So we have nowadays a real estate portfolio. How does the real estate portfolio can provide what you need for the future, and or what you need to change to provide the best operation model. And of course, as a real estate, every time we think about costs. So what are the costs and barrier to change the portfolio to really have the right portfolio in terms of not only location, but to provide the best location and conditions to our employees who work. So I would just share my screen with a small we did a research here in Brazil with our members. Okay, we have 320 members. Can you see my screen, Isabel?
Yes.
Yeah, cool. So we did a survey with our members. We have 320 members here. Most of them are corporate real estate leaders in big companies. And the first question is, how it is your portfolio before the pandemic, okay? So this is 2020. We have here in Brazil, most of the company has long lease terms, 47% of the long lease terms, 21% of owned properties. That's common in Brazil. We have one or two owned properties to be a hedge for capital or something like that. And also we have a 15 for and 15. We already have people work from home that we call home office in Brazil. It's not the right words in Portuguese, in English, but it is in Portuguese makes sense. And work from home, we have also the flexible space. The co-workings already started here in 1994. Some other co-workings start here 10 years ago. So we have a very good market for this one. And this show a no flexible portfolio, 68% of no flexible portfolio. And the second question that we did to our people, okay, what was your work from home before and during the pandemic? Of course, before, we have most of the company, almost 70% of the people answered less than 25%. Less than 25% of my employees work from home. We have much more people in the office. But during the pandemic, of course, changed dramatically. So we have almost 80% of the companies say we have a 76% or 100% of the people work from home. And of course, this help us. Well, we survived another meeting that should have been an email. So what's great, work from home. A lot of people say that's not bad. We have some restriction, some problems because I have kids at home. A lot of things to do when you work from home, and people must to respect the time for work. And but it's not so bad, right? So we also ask to our members, what are the plan after the pandemic? What your company I think about that must be the real estate portfolio as after the pandemic? And 10% say we're back to the office, period. No change for the portfolio. 26% of the respondents say we really don't know yet, and have a lot of big companies that is still thinking about what they are must to do, or what is the future of the office. They don't have very clear about, but have a lot of people say we are keep or increase the work from home. The people start to work from home 1 or 2 days per week, 3 or 4 days per week, or as will. And this also show that we are moving to a traditional office space to more work from home. Probably work from home will increase, or people tested and say it works well. So this avoid us to have this kind of things like have a meeting in the office that the agenda will be try to figure out why we're having the meeting. We have a lot of meetings and try to avoid to have the meetings. We still having the same meetings, but using Zoom, or try to avoid to have the meeting face to face and spend time to go to the office. Here in Latin America, it's very common that the big cities have a high traffic. So Mexico City is the city in the world with the highest traffic. So it's almost here. I live close to my company office, but I take 1 hour to go to the office, or 1 hour and a half, depending on the day. And also, we make the questions to the members. What do you think about flexible space, co-working, satellite offices, work for anywhere? What is the plans? Okay. And before the COVID, some companies, most of the guys say, we don't have a formal plan. We know that co-working is increasing, is coming to the country. We have an options, but we don't have a formal plan to our portfolio. We use it as we need. Like we have a new project, we don't have a space to put the people inside of the office. We go to a co-working and stay there 90 days or 120 days and leave. Some companies that already have a co-working space say, let's keep flat, some increase and some decrease. But after the pandemic, just change a lot. Like everyone now has a formal plan. At least they are thinking about a formal plan, right? And most of them then say, hey, we're not keep flat, we are increase. Or some companies say we are decrease just because we are having more people work from home. And this is not only for the real estate, okay? IT was a very high impact on IT. Most of the companies say we don't need to make a digital transformation, but the COVID that come and hit us, and now you must think about how we can provide the best space and how technology is connected with that. And also we make a kind of projection for the real estate portfolio based on this survey with our members and think about the past. So just to show that this is not new. This is the pandemic just accelerates something. Like 30 years ago here in Brazil, the real estate portfolio was pretty much a traditional one. 17% owned, 30% leased. And 20 years ago, we start to have a lot of sale leasebacks. So a lot of companies sold your offices space and make a long lease terms. A flexible work and work from home is still small just because the technology was not the best one yet, was very expensive. And also the flexible space in Brazil was very small options. In fact, just one company here 20 years ago to do that. 10 years ago, we had have a lot of sale leaseback, but the company start to working with work from home because the technology allow us, the new kind of computers and technology to work in, and the flexible start to grow. But before the COVID, we have a lot of new companies for work for flexible space, like WeWork, co-working here, beer and coffee, Juice, so a lot of other companies. So the cost is decrease, and the companies start to looking for flexible work, and also the work from home, just because the technology allow us to work from home. Very simple, right? And what you think that will be in after the COVID based on this survey? You have an increase of the work from home, maybe 30–40% of the people working from home, not every day, but 1 or 2 days per week, 3 or 4 days per week. We still have a small increase in the flexible work because we work in facing problems. Other co-working companies are facing financial problems here in Brazil and terminate leases and everything. So we are looking for how will be the ramp up again or not. And of course, we are keep less leased area, because if you increase the people work from home, we don't need too much area in the office space, and probably will reduce and try to have the lease terms more short term. So this is, I think, is for the real estate side here in Brazil, and a big picture in what you have nowadays.
Thank you, Renato, and passing it on to Miguel to give us a little bit of your perspective. We've seen many numbers, some trends in Brazil. So great. So that's a great segue for me. What have we learned from this great reset in Portugal?
All right, so good morning to everyone, and I hope everyone is okay and staying as safe as possible. I'd like to thank Izabel and the team from FRB Consulting for the invitation. As Izabel said, my name is Miguel Agostinho, and I'm the Executive Director for the Portuguese FM Association, and also a board member for the European Facility Management Association. So we are here today trying to get some lessons out of this major remote work experience and trying to forecast what will happen to corporate offices. How will they become and what purpose will they have? So it's quite a challenge for 1 hour. So what I bring you here today is the result of all the webinars we've been doing this year, and also our conference, which was held 2 weeks ago, also online. So we are a little bit of online fatigue, but so during those, I believe, roughly 60 hours of recordings, I went and took out some pieces of information which I thought could fit the challenge that Izabel has thrown to me and to Renato. So I believe you are seeing correctly my screen, I hope. It's also one of the challenges with doing this online is that you have you can't see the reaction of people from their faces. So so it seems to be a distant reality, the time when it was easy to define how many square meters we needed to occupy, depending on the number of people we employed. Because regardless of the changes we had in layouts, moving from cubicles to open spaces, from having top management in the top floors to having lounges where everybody is mingling, even if it's the CEO, there was a simple rule of thumb that related these two things, space and people. And these ratios were even normally a benchmark for measuring the efficiency of space planning in the organization. Even in recent years, especially when we were designing new offices, we started looking at the fact that not everyone needed to be in the office at the same time the entire day. So we started just designing the space to be able to accommodate maybe 40 to 60% of the people that would need to sit at the same time. Naturally, this ratio was also sensitive to the type of role that the worker had. We could overbook a little bit more if it was consultants or salespeople, and lower if it was people from finance or human resources departments, which normally would stay more in the office during the entire day. And that was the reality that we had. So when we started with remote work, due to the COVID pandemic, we messed up all of these ratios. Suddenly, many office spaces found themselves with occupations below 10%. And believing in the studies and surveys that have multiplied since then, most employees are satisfied and their managers are satisfied. So this seems to point in the way that remote work, even this that was decided in the midst of an emergency, worked well and is able to continue even in a possible post-pandemic future. But if so, what will happen to office spaces? If we use as gauge the companies that already implemented remote work, we find out that they haven't abolished corporate spaces, but rather they changed their size or the location and they repurposed it. So maybe the central offices are smaller now and they created satellite offices that can even be spaces managed by other entities, like Renato talked about, the co-working spaces. And they also define how many days people could work from home or from remote. Also, another thing that it is important to see is that even when these workers go to their main office, they use the same collaboration tools they use when they are remote. So the way people work and collaborate in these companies, it has changed. It is not dependent on the space they are at the moment, but it is dependent on their activity or in the process they are linked with, not space related. That's what happens with companies that were already remote pre-COVID, okay? Also, another thing is, can we believe all these surveys? So most companies that switched to remote work in March were not ready to do so. Different skill sets are needed to collaborate remotely and also to lead people remotely. Different types of activities are more relational than others. So if you are developing a new product or a new service, or if you are following a sales script on the phone, those are different things with different needs. But then you can ask me, but how are the results generally so positive? So it is possible that these surveys are quite conditioned to the current situation, because returning to the spaces may increase the risk of COVID transmission. That opens up the possibility that if and when it's safe to return, the answers may be different. Additionally, and this is very important, in terms of productivity, of innovation, and integration with the organization's culture, the real long-term consequences are yet to be assessed. They will only appear with time. And bear in mind that today we are not in a normal moment. So everything we compare, even business-wise, we are not talking about the same basis. So we need to be very careful with this. Also, an important point is that working remotely is not necessarily working from home. So the real estate and the cultural reality of each country and even of each city determines whether remote work can be done at home or not. In cities with apartments of 40 square meters, or in countries where you live with an extended family in the same residence, working from home can be physically, psychologically, or even technologically possible. In other words, spaces will continue to have to be used by workers, but these spaces can be clearly closer to where they live instead of forcing us to a daily commute, also like Hanato told us. Also, if a substantial part of my workforce is working outside the spaces that corporate real estate and facilities management teams directly manage, there is an important question that arises of how we will be able to support those people, what needs they will have, and where will we meet them. In this case, it will be easier to support people that work in satellite offices rather than people that are working at home, where the boundary between what is personal and what is companies, what is professional, starts to blur. The corporate real estate and the FM structures will have to be able to manage spaces that it does not control, and also in a greater number. In particular, the organization's corporate real estate and FM structure may have to interact with the corporate real estate and FM structures that manage the spaces where our employees will be working. And that will create the need for process and procedure interfaces, which will accelerate, we hope, the adoption of standards. So, and coming to my closing arguments. So one strategy doesn't fit all. So it is important to step back and think about your corporation's relation with space, namely office space. So what do you use it for? Is it just infrastructure? Just a place to put people in for them to work? Is it a way of gluing your people together around your company's culture? Or is your office a statement for all the world to see? Or even, is your office space also a source of revenue? And also, if all the spaces serve the same purpose, or if throughout your portfolio you have spaces that are for different, that fit these different purposes. If it's a head office, or if it's a sales office, or if it's a warehouse, it will probably fits different purposes. And last but not least, what activities does it support? So also what we see from companies that were already remote ready, is that they had to look into what people were doing, like activity-based, and they had to understand where and how could those people do those activities. This will define your strategy moving forward 2021, although in Izabel's slide of the conferences, for us to imagine that we were in 2022. So that's really a huge leap forward, but it will pass quickly. So, so this means that corporate real estate and facilities management, they need to be linked to the core business. But besides that, we also need to understand what people are doing and what are their needs. And all of this seems a very easy truth, but we could, before we could go along without this happening. But now that we are being challenged to decide what to do with our spaces, then we cannot face from these hard questions. And so, closing up, so we are moving forward to a moment where we see space as a service, and that spaces will have to be fluid. That will bring us a lot of challenges, and it will also will be a force that will take us from this normal of having contracts for 5 or 10 years, or if you are building an office, we have a responsibility for 30 or 40 years. So this poses us a very big question. So we will have to be managing more spaces, flexible spaces, and we'll be having to satisfy all these different users with different needs over time, while maximizing the occupancy of the spaces and ensuring that comfort and safety variables are met. And if we ask, is corporate real estate and facility management able to answer the question of how and when we will return to the spaces? Well, our answer is that we are not supposed to answer that alone. Our work is to be able to give options and to be very flexible in reacting to those options in the most agile and flexible way possible. And so in conclusion, office spaces will continue to exist, but for specific needs and activities that need to be understood. Also, having multiple locations goes very well with everyone's business continuity plans, so that's a nice plus. Corporate real estate and facility management models will need to know which are the critical services, which are the critical spaces, and which are the critical teams that they need to support. And we also need to be aligned with the core business and aligned with the people on the field. Last but not least, how will we be able to glue people around the company's culture when we don't have a single office or a single building to act as that thing? So I believe that we will really need to resource to the mission and the vision of the companies to find something that all of us can relate, even if we are working from home or if we are working from miles away from our colleagues. So hope this has enabled to get some questions and some comments from your side. And once again, thank you for being here.
Thank you very much, Miguel. I think this is very thought-provoking, the two different ways that you think, a lot of commonalities, but also some critical differences. And I have some questions coming in just to remind you that please put your questions on the Q&A session on the right bottom corner of your screen. And before asking you any questions, I would like to ask Renato if you would like to complement with anything.
Yeah, sure, Isabel. I think what's the main discussions is what will the future role of the office will be. I think work is what you do, not where you perform the work. I think this is clear, and this is what we discussed this several times, right, Isabel? I think it is something that nowadays people totally understand. We try to educate the people that the remote work and virtual meetings is a reality. Will not change. We're not missing or disappear after the pandemic. In fact, a lot of companies is reviewing your travel budget just because they understand that the virtual meetings and remote work works well. And we must change the employees and the leaders' mindset basically on what will be the me activities, something that I can do in any place or from home, and what it is the we activities, things that I must to use the office space. And with that said, the companies will start to change from when I start to work 30 years ago. I'm not so young. In fact, I have a real estate marketing formation from the last 30 years. So when I start to work, was simple. You must go to the office to work, period. No way to do this differently. Nowadays, it is an option to perform the activities. And this is, we allow us to save in time, to reduce the commuting time. And also the companies must think that choosing where to work is a competitivity advantage to retain talent, because I think it's for the first time that we have 5 generations in the workplace. So this will be really fun. You know, it's so different than other in the past that we have 2 or 3 generations in the office space. Now it's 5 different with different the way to work and everything. So I think that the office will be used more for collaboration, for branding centric activities, and also to keep the corporate culture. I think this is the key for the office space for the future.
And I'll get a hook on the culture and ask you a question that came in probably for Miguel. You said that the office culture without an office is going to be a challenge. Would you have anything to say that would give us a clue of where to get started? How would we build a culture without an office?
Yes, I think we need to start from the beginning and not starting from the ceiling. So what happens is that a lot of companies that were not remote ready, they still lack an organization. They still lack an understanding of the types of activities that people are doing. Uh, Having said that, you'll have people that you can go, you'll have teams and people that you can send to remote, and you'll have teams and people that you probably need to have within the office. And also, how many days can they work remotely? So can they still be coming to the office like once a week or twice a week or even once a month? And if that is true, will that be enough to keep people aligned with the culture of the company? But that is that is a second question. So at this moment, we really need to understand what are the needs of the people and what can be done remotely or not, and then from that starting point, and trying to understand how we'll be able to
There's another interesting question here. There are many questions. Let's see if we can get through them. How much resistance are you seeing among managers for people working from home most of the time? So what's the reaction you guys see in both countries?
I can start. So at this moment, this is also one of the things that is that makes it difficult to really understand how things will happen post-pandemic. Because at this moment, there is no resistance because you are forced to. So the external pressure is stronger than any internal decision or any internal will of a manager. So this is not something that you can be measuring, and with that measure, making an inference for forecasting the future. So at this moment, there is no resistance. But one of the things that we say in the presentation is that there is a different skill set for people to lead teams remotely. So managers need different skill sets. So they didn't acquire them by magic. So, but we need to see the pandemic going away and then to see what will be the results.
And Renato, for your contribution, if you add on to the idea, do you think people are, what's been the individual and team performance while working from home in Brazil and Portugal?
Yeah, I totally agree with Miguel that nowadays it's very difficult to measure it because it's no other way, we are forced to, sometimes we discuss like that will not be a home office, but a forced home office, or we call it like a hell office. I think for the future, HR it will be key, to change the leaders and employee mindset. Also change the HR mindset, but you must change the mindset that because I think that in the future, the companies will provide options to workplace, allowing flexible and agile office solutions. And the company that already have this kind of agile solutions was not so difficult than others traditional office space. But this challenge also is associated with another, let's say, leadership style that must be focused on the outcome rather than on time spent at the office. So they must trust their employees, empower them to shape the work to achieve the best possible results. Then say, hey, the guy is not here, he's not working. This is not the future. You must think that this will be totally different. It's more focus on goals than how much time you spend at the office space.
I have two questions here that seem to be related. So the first one is, in your opinion, the service providers, especially the big ones, are somewhat conscious and prepared to support this change management environment of their clients. And then the other one is, are you seeing many companies actively starting to reduce their space? So if people are reducing, are the service providers ready or not? What's the movement in Portugal and Brazil?
So what we are seeing here in Portugal is that, and I would say, I would say Europe, but then we are putting a lot of things in the mix, and it's difficult. So I will stick with Portugal. So what we were seeing is that companies had to renegotiate either with the service providers, either with the companies that they are leasing the spaces from. So they tried to negotiate how they could reduce the fees, the services and the fees they were paying, depending on the decrease in space occupancy and need of service that they were having. So some companies had more flexible contracts, some companies had better relationship with the service providers. So the results tended to be very, very different. But companies that had defined which were the critical spaces and the critical team, the critical activities, they were able to convert the services to those teams because the type of service that was being delivered had changed. So, for example, you had to spend now a lot of time cleaning and doing and to disinfect the spaces. So some activities have changed. So you have increased maintenance for HVAC systems. So some companies had it better thought of, the better structure of contracts than others. But at this moment, it's a huge impact in the bottom line of the companies, to those that are providing the services and to those that are receiving them. Because what happens is that you are working with closed contracts for 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years, and there is no way of changing them without having an impact either on the client or on the provider.
Mm-hmm. What about for you, Renato? What do you think? Oh, your kid. Okay.
No, don't worry. This is new normal.
Yeah.
Don't worry. So just to answer the Karen questions, the companies are not changing yet or reducing, because at least here in Brazil it's not easy. So you must identify in the lease term options, tour termination, partial surrender, and it's not common here in Brazil. And a lot of companies prefer to have a long lease term and ask it to the landlord or the investors to deliver the office ready to be used. And this is also common in Latin America. Sublease is not common here in Brazil, and the law is not so good in terms of sublease. So terminate a lease is a challenge, and have a lot of other costs like the penalty, the capital that we need to reduce them or demise the space. Is not common here in the lease term, has a clause to demise the space. So you terminate everything or keep the lease. So just because of that, and also the long lease terms that we have, probably in the future we have more short lease terms, and real estate as a service, not only as a lease term. And this is a good idea to the co-workings that can try to charge us as a pay-per-use, then ask us to lease a space inside of the co-working space. So have a lot of things to do to reduce the area or terminate the lease. So the companies are not ready yet. Most of the big companies are keeping an office space and looking for what they are reducing, but not to be in a months. This take it sometimes more than 6 months to be executed, almost 1 year sometimes. And the small companies, of course, already started to reduce because they don't have, the big companies has a lot of reserves. So the people that have a leased offices here in AAA and everything, they have a renegotiation, of course, stop to pay condominium costs or reduce it for minimal, but the lease term still be like it is, but in the new future, you'll be like a more short lease terms than long lease terms. And have companies that have the options to reduce the space. It's possible to reduce the space, but they prefer to a long lease term because they plan to stay in this location for the next 30 years, right? But now they suffering more because they would like to reduce the space, but will not be easy to do that.
There are two interesting questions here, and they're almost opposite. I'll read both and let you react, okay? One is, earlier this century, work from home was widely implemented in tech companies. And then many of them called people back to the office, like IBM, HP, Yahoo. Would it make sense to expect some kickback with remote working in the future? So that's one point of view. The other one is here, when Facebook and Twitter, among others, are going all into remote work, our real estate role has to change too. And we also need new skills and methods to support work. How do we reinvent ourselves to be proactive rather than reactive in helping define the future of the space because we know better than anyone in the company? So what have we learned from all that? How can we reinvent the real estate function?
Yeah, I think, first of all, we understand that technology will be much more closest to us. In the past, the real estate asking for technology to provide the support to the new office, but now it's totally different. From my perspective, the pandemic not impacted the productivity, okay, but it shifted the future of a workplace, okay, included the real estate role. For many employees, the amount of time spent in the office will never return to the pre-pandemic, because if you come back from what you have in the past, the learning was almost zero, right? So the employees embrace the remote work. We have an autonomy at the same time with that, but it's clear the whole of the office at the destination to keep up the corporate culture and to employees collaborate. So I don't see that we are the offices will be all shut down and the real estate market will gone. Will be different. Will be more challenge to us as a real estate role. So I think it's reasonable to assume that the future of a workplace will be less centralized, more distribution team that were intimately linked through technology. So we have not only instead, we have just one headquarter with 10 floors, maybe one floor in 10 different buildings. It is possible. So the office will serve as an important hub for the human elements and experience that technology can provide to us, like relationships, like teamwork, like the chemistry between the people and culture and everything. So I think the long-term outcome to the real estate market will be the shift in the portfolio that must be more flexible, shortest lease term, and also I think the real estate will be much more not the lease terms, but much more as a services. So this is very good to the co-working companies. Of course, they must stop to fight with us, the real estate leaders. Like, oh, I want your headquarter inside of my co-work space. Come on, don't do that. You know, like I have my headquarter. I must to keep the headquarter smaller. And if you have co-working locations in the neighborhood close to my employees, why not? I can provide satellite offices or options to the guy don't need to cross the city to go to the office, but they have an option close to home to work and have the same environment they are facing in the headquarters. So I think this is the final outcome from this pandemic.
Okay, so I will need to remind you, Miguel, that you will have, I'll give you 2 minutes. So we can come into the close time.
Yeah, only one. So I'll just say, picking up on the first question, is that there were 3 examples of companies that had a bad experience. For some moment, they said, well, let's bring people in, like IBM and Yahoo. What happens is that having having people working from home, that is very challenging. It's challenging not only for them, but also for their team leaders, their directors, the business unit managers, etc., etc. So and being also very something very visible. What I understand, for one of the things that happened in IBM and Yahoo is that maybe having a lot of people working remotely was also a way for the CEOs to explain how the results were being, the results being so bad. So I don't think it was what happened in IBM and Yahoo was saying, well, the culture is falling apart, we need to bring people back into the office. What was happening is that the business was going bad, and other IT companies were going to IBM and Yahoo and very easily recruiting their people. So so I don't think that there is a long-term problem with remote work, but it's a challenge to keep people aligned and to keep people productive, especially if it's collaboration work, if it's developing new products and services. But being difficult is not a reason for not to do it.
Yeah, and that's a great moment for us to launch our last question. After everything you heard today from our Renato, from Miguel, from your own experience, what do you think decision makers should focus their effort on planning the future corporate offices? So we have culture, technology, connections. What else? What do you think we can help in starting to redefine the real estate function in terms of bringing new aspects to decision makers? So mindset, management skills, people instead cost, culture and brand.
Yeah, I think, yeah, change the mindset for the employees and the leaders. You know, we still have some companies, we still have some leaders that are looking for the empty office, or if you are not there, you're not working. And this must be changed. So I give you my example. I have a new employee when I started in the company some months ago that I hired. I never met him face to face, but to try to, I know that he is working very hard to delivery. Instead, he's not in face of me, you know, like I still have a people with old mindset that the guy is work from home and say, hey, he's working or he's in the Netflix. I don't know, he's delivering. So, this old mindset must be changed, because I like Domenico De Masi, the guy that talk about work, and he say, hey, we have the technology for the century 21, but we work still like the guys in the century 16, you know, like 8 hours and 10 hours. Let's work as hard as possible. You can be more productive with technology. We can do more, but you must have a limit, you know. Sometimes you must stop it. And now with this pandemic, the big issue that is the work invade our home. So sometimes I must to think, oh, it's holy shit, it's so late. I must to go down and talk with my family. They need me more than my work sometimes, because the family will stay and the work can change. So it's I think you must change the mindset to be productive, but keep the mental healthy. We have a lot of discussion regarding the mental healthy for the future.
I hate to interrupt you because we're having a great conversation. We have many more questions to go through, but we promised the people who had questions that were unanswered that I will send it to Renato and Miguel, and we'll forward you the answers. We are recording the session, and it will be made available through YouTube soon. And thank you very much, Renato and Miguel, for your contributions. It's been a great session.
Thank you.
Thank you all for your participation. And just to remind you, we have today and tomorrow of Workplace Week great sessions. I hope to see you in some of our next sessions. And every session that you contribute will go to our charities. And just go to www.workplaceweek.com and you will find how great the sessions are and get inspired for that. Renato and Miguel, thank you very much. And let's keep up the good work. Thank you for the sharing. Yeah, bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you so much, Izabel, for the conduction of this. Thank you, Miguel. See you, my friend.